In May, the White House released a new research oversight policy that goes into effect next spring, as you're well aware. Would you let the committee know what you think this policy improves in terms of prior versions, and give us a little bit of detail on those improvements?
Thank you, Senator Peters. I strongly support the updated policy, the DIRC PEP policy that the White House put out. It streamlines the process for oversight of these dual-use experiments, combining what previously had been 3 separate policies for federal and institutional oversight of dual-use research of concern, as well as a policy for departmental review of enhanced pandemic pathogens. The new policy also expands the scope of agents that fall under the policy and need additional levels of oversight and review, and includes, for example, not just human health pathogens, but pathogens relevant to animal and plant health, which I strongly support because I think that's long been a neglected part of our policy process. The policy provides an opportunity to really have a iterative conversation at multiple levels with roles for the principal investigator, for the research institution, for the agency, and then independently at the department level and across government, opportunities to weigh the risks and benefits of that research in a way that allows you to consider those prior to making funding decisions.
So are there any gaps in the policy?
The policy still is limited to federal funding of research. It is one of the many tools in the toolbox by which we can use the power of publicly funded research to ensure that we are conducting research ethically, safely, and in a secure manner. However, it doesn't extend beyond federally funded research, although the policy does extend beyond an individual funding agency at the institutional level, in that it has expectations for the institution beyond just an individual project to really apply the scope of the policy to anything that falls within it. But again, that's only applicable to publicly funded institutions.
Mm-hmm. Dr. Esvelt, as was stated, this new policy applies only to federal funding. Should independent oversight agency also regulate research supported by non-federal funding as well? Do you see that as a significant gap?
Yes, Chairman, I agree that the gap provided by non-federal funding is a major one. The policy does attempt to take this into account by requesting that entities that receive federal and non-federal funding regulate the research that is performed using non-federal funding. However, this does still leave out a large fraction of entities. And I believe in order to be consistent with security policies in other domains, we should regulate non-federally funded research within our borders and take international action to discourage research in this vein, which I believe harms our national security.
You mentioned international action. Dr. Wolonets, should the U.S. do something to deal with oversight of research that's being done outside of the United States as well?
Thank you, Chairman Peters. I worry a lot more about research involving pathogens that takes place outside of the United States than I do about the system within the United States. Our biosafety, biosecurity system within the U.S. may not be perfect. It still involves human beings, and so there is still the possibility of accidents. However, I feel a lot more comfortable with it than I do with the promulgation of high-consequence pathogen research around the world, particularly in the wake of the pandemic. And so I think, in fact, it's imperative for the U.S. to use the levers at our disposal in order to try to raise the norms and standards and regulations around the world for this sort of research, whether that is through the carrots and sticks incentive of funding research in foreign nations where we impose our requirements for oversights and conduct on them, or supporting the adoption of enforceable and accountable mechanisms like the international standard I mentioned, ISO 35001.
Very good. Dr. Parker, I think I'm concerned, I know members of our committee are concerned that lab safety and security standards, let alone the standards in other countries, are not adequate to ensure that risky research can be properly contained in labs that are working on these dangerous pathogens. So Dr. Parker, I would like you to comment on the state of biosafety and biosecurity standards, and specifically what we should do to ensure that we're addressing what you consider the largest threats that we face.
Sure, thank you, Senator Peters. And I want to also just first echo the concern about the international space, and we're going to have to, I think, step up and do more from leadership on the international stage. But biosafety and biosecurity standards, they've evolved over the years through best practices. One thing that I think is a gap is we don't have a dedicated research program focused on biosafety. What are the evidence-based that we can actually better improve our biosafety, and then making sure that that supports any biosecurity mandates that may be coming down, so they're more evidence-based. We need to, and that's in my written testimony about how we need to better support that going forward. And we need better ways to more in real time share best practices. We do have, and that means more real-time sharing of, say, laboratory incidents, near misses, so that we can capture those lessons in real time, share them with other labs and so forth. I cannot overemphasize the importance of our high containment research enterprise. That really is the foundation of our preparedness planning for the emergence of the next dangerous thing that's going to come out of nature. So we have to support that, but we have to have a strong foundation of laboratory biosafety and biosecurity to do that.